Hello, everybody. Grumpy Gay Guy here with yet another bitch rant that is much too long for TikTok, so it will be going on my YouTube channel. Today's bitch rant has to do with an email that my best friend was sent by her Marshall University professor. And the reason, before I go any further, I should tell you that he has a doctorate, mind you. That will be important later. But anyway, the reason I stipulate that he is a Marshall University professor is because I want to point out the just craziness that is that. He is basically trying to brag that he's a professor and has a doctorate, but that means nothing when you teach at Marshall University, because Marshall University is the bottom of the bottom. There is a reason that people call Marshall the clearance bin of universities, and there is a reason that people call Marshall University professors the clearance rack of university professors. Because their quality is shit poor and nobody else wanted them. Not one person. And that's when I get into the fact that you don't go up to Marshall because there's nothing below Marshall. Marshall's literally the bottom of the bottom. You can't fall any further down in your career than Marshall University. That is a fact. Like, you don't go out of Marshall either. You don't go up from Marshall. Like, once you hit Marshall, you're done. Everybody has said, fuck you, get the fuck out of my institution. Because you are a shit person. You are a shit teacher. You don't know how to do any fucking thing. Get the fuck out. Like, if you go to Marshall, like, everyone is done with you and your career is dead. With that said, let's get into what this wonderfully educated doctorate said to my best friend. I actually have notes here, by the way, and I'm going to read off of them, and there are going to be parts that I don't remember because I wrote this like 3 fucking days ago. I wrote it last week and filmed like 4 versions of this video. So like, and my memory is shit. But anyway, let's continue. So this bitch rant will be about the VARK learning styles, VARK. And the professor, lazy as fucking all, lazy as ever, not just lazy, but fucking bumfuck lazy, decided to send my friend an email and say that, well, VARK learning styles are not really valid anymore. They're not good. They're not based in science. They're basically bullshit that students try to use to get themselves out of having to actually learn stuff. Yes, that's how I picture that dumb fuck talks. So, you can already tell my stance on this. You can't, the best part. I wrote it down right here so I would not forget it, because I did. I forgot it in the first 2 recordings of this. But no. You know what this guy did? You know what this fucking doctorate did? He sent my friend a fucking article from the Atlantic. Oh my god. Oh my god, I only have 2 master's degrees, and I know that that's fucking bullshit. There's nothing scholastic about the fucking Atlantic, dumbass. Don't fucking send it to people. Oh my god. That, I actually had to take a day off. A day off from doing my other work so that I could just process the fact that a Marshall University professor who has a doctorate used an article from the Atlantic to try to get out of doing his fucking job. It took me a day to process that, and I'm still not wrapping my head around it. Why not just fucking do your damn job? That's a solution. Sorry, I have a long-haired cat, and there's cat fur everywhere. But anyway, so, Calm down. So, what I did, I before I say anything else, I'm going to tell you that I did my own research, actual research, and I picked out an actual article from an actual accredited source, an actual scholarly accredited source. I am not, however, going to tell you what it was. In fact, if there is a name, such as Neil Fleming, the man who created VARK, the man who initiated and instituted the VARK learning system, Neil Fleming, I will say that person's name. And if there is, say another name like Cindy May, who conducted a survey, I will give credit where credit is due, but I am not going to say the name of this article, nor am I, nor am I going to say any of the words in the title of the article. Do you know why? Because I know that Dr. Dumbfuck at Marshall University is going to spend all of his time discrediting the article. By the way, I don't even remember what the fuck it was. That's why I have notes and not the actual printout of the article, because I don't want to remember what the fuck it was. If you want to discredit my article, you gotta find it first. However, I will be giving appropriate attention where appropriate attention is due, and I will be giving appropriate credit where appropriate credit is due. So, with that said, let's get into this, shall we? I mean, I've already spent 7 minutes bitch ranting about that Dr. Dumbfuck and how I know exactly what he's going to do before he even does it, and I know exactly what he's going to say before he says it, because I'm just that much better than him. But anyway, okay, so first thing on my notes, I already said that, don't use the Atlantic. Literally first thing in my notes. Anyway, many students have looked to VARK. Like, many students actually use this because many professors actually think that it is relevant because you know what? It actually does help people learn. Let's go on to point number 2 because I think that gets into it. I think this delves a little bit deeper. This does a little bit more than just scratch the surface than my little bit bench rant that I've just repeated like 3 times. Okay, so VARK is not based in science is the main claim of this article. Oh, by the way, I should announce that this article is trying to refute the VARK learning system. So if you want to discredit this specific article, you are basically saying that VARK is valid. Because, I am going to go through point by point and state why I think it's wrong. But if you want to discredit this article, that's fine by me. You're doing my job for me and creating extra work for yourself. So you're doing your fucking job, so I win twice. But anyway, it's not based in science. That's the other name that I mentioned, Cindy May. She, according to my notes here, she conducted a brief analysis, and it emphasized brief. The students' learning preferences did nothing to dictate how they actually learn. Okay, so what did she study? Who did she study? How long did she study them? I mean, it sounds like her argument itself is not based in reality or based in science. I mean, that's literally what I have here. Like, so far, like it literally says, so far it looks like the only counter studies performed were also not based in science because they followed the same premise as the initial study itself, which they're saying is not based in science, which leads me into point number, well, I don't know which one it is, but it's, they say it's anecdotal. I don't. Yeah, here it is. It's point number 3 on my list. They're trying to say that the original study is anecdotal and therefore not based in science. But the counter studies are also anecdotal. Okay, so what they mean when they say, for Dr. Dumbfuck over there at Marshall University, I feel that I should explain the meanings behind some of these big fancy words that he clearly doesn't seem to understand. Okay, so when they're saying that the initial study was anecdotal, they're basically saying that because he relied on the input from the students, the students telling him how they learn, and because he's just one person and he wanted a massive study, he implemented the use of other professors that he knows. So there's hearsay upon hearsay mixed with just basic hearsay, and then there's anecdotal upon anecdotal right beside the anecdotal. So there's the anecdotal from his students, and then there's the anecdotal from his peer professors, which is anecdotal from their students. And they're trying to say that that's just way too much hearsay. That's way too much. There's just too large a portion of human error. And here I am going to tell you that that literally discredits everything behavioral science. Did you know that that discredits the DSM? Because what they're essentially saying, I need to dust my house or something because so much cat fur. Anyway, what they're basically saying is that you can't trust the word of the students, or you can't trust the word of person X over here. So essentially, when you're trying to diagnose somebody using the DSM, you can't trust that patient's word. Like, okay, so person X here exhibits symptoms of being schizophrenic, but we can't call him schizophrenic because that's anecdotal evidence. Or person B over here says that they, oh, well, yes, next on my list, I was going to jump into the Myers-Briggs. That also discredits the Myers-Briggs, which a lot of people are actually trying to do, and I disagree with them. I completely disagree with them. Like, the Myers-Briggs has 16 different categories, and it tries to group people into one of those 16 different categories. And so if person X over here says that they are INFJ, well, you can't believe that because that's anecdotal evidence. If somebody tells you something, you can't just take them at their word for it, is basically what they're saying when they say it's anecdotal. And I'm going to make a video about the Myers-Briggs because that deserves its own little bitch rant video. However, I will continue on with this one. So, I myself am an INFJ. That's why I used that example. And see, the thing is, there is a basis, there's an assessment that you take, and if you answer it honestly and truthfully, you will get an accurate and valid response. Like, it assesses, the Myers-Briggs is a little bit more difficult. That's why it deserves its own video. And the basically also the Minnesota multiphasic. That's just like 200 some questions of true or false. Like, it's literally just a set of 200 plus questions that are all true or false. And they look to, I guess, gauge your personality type, your mental. I haven't looked too much into it, but from what I understand, it is a more in-depth, more grounded version of the Myers-Briggs personality assessment. And they're basically saying that that's wrong because, well, you can't rely on the person taking the test because they're prone to lie. Well, my response to that is, what the fuck reason do they have to lie? It's a question assessing their personality. It's a question assessing who they are as a person. Like, they're not going to answer. Like, if a question says, do you feel like you're the life of the party? Which I'm pretty sure that's like 10 questions on there. They ask that question 10 different ways on there. And I always answer no. I can promise you that other people who don't feel like the life of the party are going to answer that they're not the life of the party. Like, the questions are more involved, but they're not that much more involved. Freaking cats. There's a cat here, right here. Oh, I think I got it. Finally. But anyway, okay, so getting back to VARK, it is a much easier assessment. It's like basically asking you questions about how you learn. So, like, if you learn best from a lecture, then that's different than if you learn best with somebody who gives you charts and graphs, or somebody who writes things down so that you can see it in written form. Like, I mean, you can't say it's not valid when it has been proven to work. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to go through another thing on the list. Neil Fleming's original analysis was not based in science because it was anecdotal, based on observations. They say that it's that there's partial to human error. This discounts personal experience in a study centered around personal experience. That's basically what I just said. Okay. Again, they say it's not scientific, and technically yes and no. I mean, again, it's that gray area. Psychology itself is a pseudoscience, which means it's somewhere around the periphery of science, but not actual science. But yet it's still sciencey enough. It still follows enough of a formulaic expression that it is technically a science, even though it's not a science. And that's basically why we get the word pseudoscience. I would actually personally use the word parascience, but because it's around the vicinity of being a science, even though it's not in the specific bubble of being science. But, oh, okay, so one of the dumb fuck researchers on here did that college grad thing you do. You know, for all of my college grads out there listening, you know that thing you do when you're not sure what to write? You have 10 pages to write and you only have like 3 pages of content. So what do? You go through and you start like, well, what does blank mean? Well, what does blank blank mean? Well, what does blank 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 mean? This is my understanding of blank 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 and blank blank blank. You know, like you go through and you start saying, well, to me, this is defined as blah, 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 blah. And you spend a page or two defining that concept. And then this is defined as blah, 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 blah. And you spend another page or two. And by the time you're done defining concepts, you've got 6 pages on an essay that really can be summed up in 2. But anyway, they're saying that the term academic success was not clearly defined. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, so you're going to this point in your brain where you're so smart that you've reverted back to fucking dumb. Academic success should be self-explanatory. Success in academia. I don't know what else, I don't know what more I can say. I don't know how fucking smart, dumb you gotta fucking be to not understand what academic success means. Success in academia. Academic success. Okay, so the dumb fuck who said that was Philip Newton, by the way. I do have his name down here. And again, you can look up all of these names you want, but if you want to discredit this article, which I highly doubt you do, because you will be proving my work and doing your damn job simultaneously, making me win twice, just like I said earlier. I just wanted to repeat that just to let it sting a little bit more. Okay, so Philip Newton believes that it isn't scientific because it's basically just confirmation bias. Um, no, it isn't. Confirmation bias, it's different because the person has to undergo an assessment to find out if they are a certain type of learner. A confirmation bias starts at the end and works the other way around. Like, you don't. Confirmation bias starts at the answer and works its way back around to the assessment. So that it's literally working in the opposite direction. Confirmation bias is saying that, well, I'm a well, I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I'm going to say that all of these things that point to kinesthesia are, or kinesthetics, not kinesthesia. I don't know why I said that. All these things that point to the K form of learning are me, which that's basically, you're going to answer in the way. Like, you start off with the answer in mind and then work your way through the analysis based off that. The VARK, whereas assessments like Myers-Briggs, Minnesota Multiphasic, and anything in the DSM and the VARK learning styles, all of these assessments require you to go in without an understanding of anything. Just answer truthfully and you will get an actual valid answer. Like, literally, their only argument is a bunch of fancy schmancy ways, a fancy schmancy academic ways of saying, well, you can't trust people to answer honestly. However, Newton's mistake with this analysis is that he put all of the focus on the instructor. Ooh. See, he was trying to discredit. So apparently, in the article, I'm remembering this now, Philip Newton, in his analysis of the VARK learning styles, he was trying to discredit the instructor's analysis of the assessments instead of saying that it was the students. He's putting the human error on the instructor assessing the assessments, and then instead of putting, well, I guess he didn't have much else to say because Cindy May and a bunch of other people had already said that you can't trust it because you can't trust the student test subjects or whatever, the people taking the assessment. You can't trust them to answer honestly. So now he took a different approach and said, well, you also can't trust the assessor to assess correctly. Well, I mean, again, and that's why it's a parascience. That's why it's a pseudoscience. That's why it's not a real science, but it's still a science because it follows a formula. It follows a set of guidelines and restrictions. Like, if you answer, I don't know, like, let's say all of the A answers are V and B is A and so on and so forth. And if you answer like every single A every single time, then, you're going to get A. Or if you answer V every single time, then you're going to get V. But like, I actually forgot where I was going with that, honestly, because the stupidity, the smart stupidity is just shrinking my brain. It's actually making it hurt. Oh yeah, and the final point, I need to address this. Like, this is one of my biggest bitch rants. Oh, somebody, Philip Newton, no, the writer of the essay, okay. The writer of this specific study goes on to say that just because you have a favorite learning style does not mean that you learn best that way. Bitch, yes the fuck it does. In what way is that not? Okay. So, I don't know if you know this, but scientific studies have shown that if students are having fun while learning, they're going to retain the information better. I mean, I don't know why they had to conduct studies to figure that out, but scientists have figured that out. If you say you are a visual learner, one, that doesn't purport that you cannot learn any other way, but it just means that this way, let's say you are 75% visual and 5% kinesthetic, you know, and some random other percents for the other two. But, like, you know, if someone presents you information using the teaching you in a kinesthetic style or format, you're only that result means you're only 5% likely to retain the information, whereas if they present it to you in a visual format, you're 75% likely to retain the information. Do you see how that works? Okay, so that's literally what it's saying. If you have a preferred method that's not confirmation bias, like if you don't have to know VARK to know that, hey, I learn better when somebody sits up in front of a class and lectures me. Some people actually do learn best that way. And so they're much more likely to retain the information when the information is presented in a lecture format. If a professor lectures and the person learns best with, say, a PowerPoint presentation, they're less likely to retain the information from a just plain old lecture than if the professor uses a PowerPoint. So, technically, yes, a person does learn best with their preferred method. You cannot say otherwise. There's literally no proof to point otherwise. Like, there's just not. Okay, so this is going on. I wanted to cut this off at 20 minutes. We're already 8 minutes ahead of that. I'm going to end this here. I'll probably make another video, hopefully a much shorter one. I will rewrite my notes so that this comes off easier. Oh, I'll still get the jabs in at the Marshall professors because they're dumb as fuck. And they actually think they're smart. That's hilarious. But no. Okay. Well, that's it for this video. It's getting on 30 minutes. I don't like to make my videos this long anymore, but if you've stuck through the whole 30 minutes, I congratulate you. Very few people actually do make it through one of my full bitch rants. But anyway, until next time, goodbye, everybody.